Were we able to get that, Courtney? Very good. All right, recording is in progress. So I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen so we can take a look at this. Possibly. Here we go. And all right. Hopefully everybody can see that slide presentation and presentation mode. This is Kansas Airport Improvement Program. We're going over some minor updates. Is that a question or just a hot mic? Okay, we'll just press on. Please mute your mics unless you have something to say. Feel free to put questions in the chat if you have those, and we will get to those as we proceed. So this is, again, Kansas Airport Improvement Program. Just going over some of the minor changes that have gone on or that we have implemented. Just going over some very basic information. There are 142 public use airports within the state and 80 NIPIAS, 62 non-NIPIAS. The Kansas Airport Improvement Program is basically the main funding mechanism to help airport sponsors maintain those airports. And there are some objectives that KAIP program follows. The first one is maintaining the system's runways to a pavement condition index of 65 or better. That is an update. So previously we had very good condition, but the 65 is an actual numerical value that was recommended by a joint task force. It's easier to quantify, and it allows us to use that as a trigger for investment. So just wanting to make sure that the pavement conditions, especially the runways, are at a 65 pavement condition index or better. Improving safety, minimizing surface travel time for air ambulance locations, and enhancing airport and community economic development appeal are all objectives of the Kansas Airport Improvement Program. For fiscal year 26, our target timeline is conducting workshops right now in December of 2024. The purpose of this workshop is just to give you basic information about the minor changes with KAIP guidelines that'll take effect January 1st of 2025. It is not to get any project-specific information from airports. However, any airport that wishes to discuss information before an application or want to discuss the eligibility for a specific project, feel free to touch base with us at any time. We'd love to have that conversation with you. If you want to schedule some specific time to talk about an airport or a specific project, please feel free to do that with us as well. The regular cycle, the standard in-cycle applications will be accepted January 1 to January 31st, but please do not wait until 4:30 p.m. on January 31st to submit those applications for in-cycle applications. Submit those anytime from January 1 to January 31st. Do not wait until the last second, just in case your computer crashes, our system crashes. There are technical difficulties that can sometimes arise. Please do enter those early, and that also helps us be able to gather that information and compile it so we're able to review that information in a timely manner after the cutoff of January 31st. In-cycle selection and announcements will be anytime from February to March of 2025. So we'll review all the applications. We'll have several there's a selection board that will review the information. We also have meetings with the FAA for looking at NIPIAS project or NIPIAS airports and projects they may already have programmed with the FAA, coordinating some of the activities and some of the funding that FAA may already have programmed, and you're trying to find any kind of funding. You may or may not know that the FAA already has it programmed. So we try to coordinate as much as possible for NIPIAS airports for their applications. We'll review internally as well. There is a selection committee that is comprised of several members within KDOT that have project management and pavement experience. It will not just be myself making that selection. So, and then once those selections are made, they're suggested and recommended to the secretary, and then secretary reviews and then makes the suggestions and recommendations to the governor. So there is a selection process. It's not just a quick review by one person. There is so once the selection review and selection and announcements are made sometime, hopefully between February and March of 2025, we'll send out the in-cycle grant paperwork, and that'll be sometime between March and July of 25. And then the earliest that in-cycle funding will be available is July 1 of 2025, provided your contract is fully executed, meaning signed by the sponsor and signed by the secretary. If your contract is signed before July 1st of 2025, the funds will not be available until July 1. If your contract is signed after July 1 of 2025, then the funds will be available whenever your contract is executed. Out-of-cycle emergency requests are always accepted year-round, so you don't have to wait until a specific time to submit those. However, those projects really should be an out-of-cycle, unplanned emergency. You have weather damage, for instance, or something happened that necessitates an immediate review of that project. Those projects are reviewed and considered on a case-by-case basis based on the emergency need and whether that project can wait until the next cycle or not. So we'll take a look at those, funding permitting. If we have the funding to review those, we'll take a look at those projects. And if we determine that it is an emergency need, that those projects may be considered. But if it's not an emergency need, it will just go to the next cycle. So feel free to submit those if you do have those emergencies that pop up. Looking back at the previous cycle, which is fiscal year 25, this was the first year that we had 15 million available. We received 135 applications, $46.5 million KDOT ask, 83.3 million total project value, 14.4 million awarded to 58 projects at 37 airports, with a total project value of 34.1 million. So as you can see, we had 15 million available. We were able to fund $14.4 million worth of projects at 58 projects at 37 airports. We put some funding back as a reserve because sometimes projects have situations that come up that expenses are a little bit more than initially anticipated. There's also those emergency projects that pop up. Towards the end of the grant cycle, so towards the end of the fiscal year, if we do have any funding remaining, we may look at those applications that were previously submitted that were right on the bubble of being funded, to take a look at any remaining funding going towards those projects. But that's not a guarantee. There is very limited funding, and we will try to give away 100% of that 15 million as possible. Even at that, the program, just like everything else, is oversubscribed. Taking a look at our pavement conditions across the state, you will notice that at NIPIAS airports, and this information is actually several years old, but at NIPIAS airports, we average a 64.5 pavement condition index. Non-NIPIAS airports fare out even worse at 48.7 pavement condition index for those non-NIPIAS. And you can see some pictures and examples of that. These are actual runways, so they're not parking lots, or this is where aircraft are trying to land. You can see some major repairs that are needed there. Because the funding is so limited, and because the program is oversubscribed, and because we have a huge need with pavements are going to be a huge priority for funding it. So This is the pavement project selection priority just for fiscal year 2026. Every year we'll take a look at um, either expert recommendations. We'll take a look at KAIP program objectives. We'll also take a look at the Kansas Airport System Plan objectives and see where that funding needs to go. Last year, we had a joint task force that reviewed all of our pavements, and they basically told us that our pavements need a lot of attention. And as you can see with the pavement condition rating, the averages we have system-wide, we need to put a lot of funding into pavement projects right now. So that is pavement preservation is going to be the highest priority for fiscal year 26. That's not set in stone for future years. Every year we'll take a look at it and we'll look at the priority based on the current conditions that we have and what we are trying to accomplish. That will also require feedback from consultants and feedback from airport sponsors. If you're seeing places, that you're having challenges, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll take a look at um, consider that information for priority and selection for the following fiscal year. Pavement preservation on the main taxiway or runway. The main runway and the taxiway serving that runway is our top priority. If aircraft can't land at the airport, everything else is kind of secondary. Pavement preservation for aircraft movement areas other than taxi lanes and hangar approaches is, again, high priority. Safety concerns, navigational aids, air ambulance enhancements, and so forth. Those are the priorities based on, again, fiscal year priorities based on the current information that we have. Tips for successful application, prioritize projects. So airport needs, available local match, look at local leadership support for those projects and other funding sources. If you have the needs, but your local leadership doesn't want to support that project or you don't have the local match to support that project, please don't apply. If you can't move forward with that project at the local level, do not apply, do not tie up those funds that could go to another airport because, as you can see, we are, again, oversubscribed. If you don't have that leadership, we'd like for you to have these conversations with your city and municipal leadership or the airport sponsored leadership so they can understand the condition of the airport and where investments are needed, and again, are able to support the grant application, the local match, continuing to maintain those improvements if you do make any improvements. Also know the funding limits. So even though we have $15 million, the funding for any one single project is $800,000. We are, again, oversubscribed. We cannot have huge projects every year because we have a lot of needs system-wide. So our funding limits are not changing. 800,000 for a single project, 1.2 million for full depth reconstruction of an existing paved runway, and 1.6 million for a brand new paved runway. Now, that is per project. If you have a project that's bigger than that, you likely may have to phase that project over several years. We will consider phasing. Just because a phase of a project is selected does not give you a guarantee that subsequent phases are going to be selected because we can't determine what will happen in the future. Every project will be reviewed based on its merits and based on the needs and objectives of the Kansas Airport Improvement Program and the Kansas Airport System Plan. And again, any feedback that we receive. Every project will be reviewed on an annual basis based on its merits as compared to what other projects there are. So your project phase one may be ideal for this year. There's no guarantee that next year it will be able to compete or that we'll have funding for subsequent phases. Just keep that in mind. So there is a funding match required. This is one of the areas that we've updated a little bit just to streamline the process and remove any of the confusion. Anything system preservation, modernization, design, or planning, is a 90-10 split. In the past, we've had multiple split levels, and we've cleaned that up. Anything that's equipment or hangar project related is a 50-50. And when we look at equipment, it's equipment that's not specifically installed. So if you buy a fuel trailer, for instance, that is equipment that's not installed. It's mobile equipment. If you buy a tractor or a snow plow, again, equipment is a 50-50 match. If you buy a fuel system that is going to be installed, so you buy the tanks and the above ground storage tanks and the filter equipment and the pumps and everything, and you have that equipment installed, then that's actually the where number one, or the system preservation, modernization, design, and planning comes in. It's a 90-10 split at that point. So if it's just the equipment, standalone, uninstalled, 50-50. The most that will contribute to a hangar project is, again, 50-50. Also, the most we will contribute to state participation and local match to a federally funded project is 50-50. And we've shied away from participating in federally funded projects in the past, because we assume that since you got the federal funds, then why should we tie up state funds within that? In all honesty, sometimes you need a little bit of help with the local fund to be able to get those federal funds, and we don't want that to be a hurdle. So if you absolutely need it, we'll take a look at it. Please make sure to only apply if you absolutely need the help. Within the project, we would like some very specific information. Please include specifics like the project type, the size, the materials. Don't have an application that is so general that we have a lot of questions to answer. I want to widen the runway. Well, how wide are we going? How deep are we going? What are the specifics? What materials are you going with? Give us some engineer estimates if you have those, or contractor estimates if depending on the project size, depending on um, where we want to know where you're getting your information. Are you just taking a guess based on some rudimentary numbers, or do you actually have some um, specific figures that are that can be used? Where this will come into play is you're asking for a specific amount for this project, and if you don't have that background information and don't have a full grasp on how much this project will cost, it could vary wildly. And that, being halfway through a project and then your expenses increase because, you greatly underestimated the amount of materials or the labor or any of that, is it could impact your project, and it also impacts whether that project moves forward or not. So make sure to give us excellent information, as the best information that you have. Give us detail. Have an engineer provide those estimates if it's a larger project, or otherwise have a contractor provide those estimates on other projects. Give us a narrative. Tell us why this project is important for you. Um, Pictures are, if you can get pictures, that sometimes helps with the narrative as well. And letters of support also help. Again, being out within the community, getting some input and feedback and support from community members, or your council, your mayor, the legislators, that absolutely helps, because it gives them the awareness about your airport and your needs, but it also shows that they support your project. So it's important that the sponsor applies, not a third party, not someone that is, that is well-intentioned or trying to help the airport out. Um, the sponsor is the municipality or the entity that owns and operates the airport. You can have one of the sponsor's employees that has specific approval from the sponsor to apply. It just can't be a third party that's not involved. We also want the sponsor to apply only if the project can move forward within 2 years or less. So don't apply if you don't have the local funds, don't have that commitment from the sponsors and from the leadership at the sponsor. And if you're not 100% certain that that project can move forward in 2 years or less, please don't apply. Just wait until another year if there's any question. Make sure that the project addresses critical pavement repairs, safety concerns, obstructions. If you have those items, but yet you want to do another project that leaves all of those items unanswered, then the project may not be selected, or the priority may be lower on the list. So projects that address those concerns typically fare much better for selection. Projects addressing air ambulance access or improving the airport's ability for additional funding will also receive additional consideration. So if you have an airport that's in an air ambulance desert, and you have some recommendations from either the Joint Task Force, the Air Ambulance Association, and the air ambulance operator that wants to come in, but would like some improvements, give us some of those details that may help. Also, projects that help you receive additional funding, and this is potentially aimed at NIPIAS airports. If you're an unclassified NIPIAS airport and you have 9 aircraft and you need another tie down or potentially a small hangar to get that 10th aircraft, so you become classified and start getting federal funding, let us know that as well. Anything that helps you get additional funding is of interest, and we'll definitely take a look at that. There is bonus points possible if you're doing heavy education or outreach or community engagement. So if you're doing that, please share that information with us, what you're doing. Send us pictures of that. Keep that information flowing to us. The stronger your ties are to the community, the stronger the community will be able to support your efforts and support any funding for whatever you're trying to do. So we're really big believers in a strong community engagement effort because it makes for stronger airports. Bonus points also potentially if if you are able to have a higher local match. So the less state funds for a project, the more projects we can do, and that helps everybody out. So if you need a little bit of help but can do higher than that 90-10 split, please let us know that as well. That may make the difference between your project being funded or not if it's right on the edge. Our expectations are that you budget for and maintain pavements and infrastructure. So we are not going to be the sole source of pavement preservation or maintenance for your airport. We expect you and your community, and we expect the airport sponsors to have a budget for maintaining your pavements and your infrastructure. So make sure that you're doing annual pavement maintenance. Make sure that you're doing, minimal things like vegetation control, crack seal. Those will help extend the life of your pavement. And the more preventative maintenance that we do before we get to 65 pavement condition index, the longer the pavement will last, and the less we'll have to spend on full depth reconstruction and reclamation. So we're definitely big into pavement maintenance, and we definitely want sponsors to have some skin in the game, be able to budget for those repairs. NIPIAS airports are going to be expected to submit annual CIP updates and based aircraft counts to the FAA. That is a requirement for NIPIAS airports to remain eligible to receive FAA funding. We're going to expect that even for the unclassified airports. We expect you to be as eligible as possible to receive those federal funds. We'll work with you to try to get over the requirements for being classified, but you still need to be able to maintain your based aircraft counts and submit your CIP updates. Even if you are unclassified and you submit those updates, that allows you to receive funding from the FAA once every 10 years for runway repairs. So receiving federal dollars is huge for us because, again, we don't have enough state funds to be able to do everything we need for the pavement. So as long as the airport sponsors are doing everything they can to be able to be eligible for other than state dollars, we'd love to make sure that you are able to do that. So NIPIAS airports are going to be expected to submit CIP updates and based aircraft to the FAA. NIPIAS and non-NIPIAS airports will be asked to provide information about pavement maintenance within the last 3 to 5 years and prioritized capital improvement projects listed for the next 5 years. So we want to know where your planning is, even though you haven't had to submit that information to us in the past. We want to know where your plans are so we can see where your goals, where your vision is for the airport. We may see something on there that we think is a higher priority based on available funding, and we may ask you to take a look at potentially applying for something in the future. We may have a conversation to help with again, seeing where your vision is, where your community prioritizes their projects. We want to kind of have a good grasp on where you see the airport going in the next 5 years. One of the things that we have given you is we've given you the tools to be able to take a look at your pavement conditions. Once every 3 years, every airport, every public airport will have pavements that are inspected, and there will be a report that comes out. The report link is on the bottom of the screen there. So you can click on that for your particular airport. This information is listed on our website, but you can click on that for your particular airport to see what the conditions are of each section within the airport, as well as some of the recommendations and potential funding sources that are available to help you with those pavement needs. This is extremely valuable information. And again, we are trying to track pavement maintenance, preventative maintenance, before it gets to the point where we have to completely overhaul the pavement, completely do a full depth reconstruction. Additional expectations, funding is not available until July 1st of 2025. And contract is fully executed. So the earliest in-cycle funding for the next fiscal year will be available is July 1 of 2025, provided you have a fully executed contract. We are implementing a notice to proceed this year just to clear up any confusion over whether you have the funding available, whether you have contracts executed. Do not start any project or incur any expenses until the contract's fully executed and you get the notice to proceed for fiscal year 26. Make sure that you advise the start date of the project. So if you are starting the project, remember that you have to start that project within 2 years based on the current contracts, and that may change in the future. But if you're starting the project, please let us know that your project is starting, so that can set the time clock basically for the contract. Projects should be capable of completion within 1 year. If you have, and this is again looking at a specific phase. So if it's a multi-phased project, then that particular phase should be completed within 1 year. If there are any changes to either the funding or the scope, please seek approval. Let's have that conversation before any changes actually occur. So if you want to stray from the scope of the grant agreement, we need to have that conversation before you make that change. If you need additional funding because for whatever reason the estimates that you had were off, or maybe there's something new that is happening that you'd like to go after or try to do, we need to have that conversation before you incur any of those expenses. If you don't, then you're risking not having those additional expenses incurred. Complete the project based on the scope and the application, and advise any delays or problems or reasons for those delays. I had one airport that said we tried to start it, 2 years ago, but we couldn't get any bids. We couldn't get any contractors to give us any bids on it. Let us know that information. If you're having challenges with a project because of something that is out of your control, let us know. We might be able to try to find a solution that can help you out. When you do also, and one thing that's not on this list is that when you do apply for a project and tell us the scope of that project that you're interested in, and you get that grant, you're expected to complete that project. If you are encountering cost overruns, again, seek a supplement before you incur those expenses. But don't think that you'll just do 75% of the project and not complete that project because you're out of funding. You are expected to complete that project based on your application and the scope. And when we give you that grant, it's based on completing that project based on your scope. So keep that in mind. You're applying for a project. You're expected to complete that project within that time frame, within that scope, and within that funding. If any of that changes, let us know before those changes occur. We do have something new for fiscal year 26, and this is in response to hangar projects traditionally being extremely difficult to fund. They don't compete well typically through the standard in-cycle KAIP applications. So this is a second opportunity for a hangar project to be considered. We will still consider hangar projects as part of the standard in-cycle application. And if the hangar project addresses specific concerns, um, there may be, it may qualify to be funded just under the regular cycle. But for any hangar applicant that wants to complete this additional information, if your hangar project is not funded or selected within the standard cycle regular KIP round of funding, then you are eligible for a quote unquote special hangar project lottery. We will pick one project from all eligible applicants that have completed this information from the list of applicants for hangar projects. So you have to apply during the standard in-cycle January 1 to January 31st. You have to complete this information if you want to be considered for the hangar selection lottery. We will pick one project from all eligible applicants to fund one project that hasn't been selected under the regular selection process. So if you're not selected under regular selection, you complete this information. We will pick one project at random from eligible applicants. Now, what are we looking for? This opportunity is 50-50 match, again, limited to 500,000 maximum state participation. So if you have $1 million hangar project, that's the maximum that we can look at here with 50-50 state participation. We need additional information, and we want you to be able to gather this information. Give us information about the current hangar wait list, including the name and number, current base, and last confirmation update. We want